Good afternoon, good evening. This is Terry Wisdom, and this is Harlem Network News. And as many of you know, Harlem Network News is a media platform. We started at the onset of COVID, and we're still here. We're an essential service. We started when Black folks were walking around Harlem and they were saying, I'm Black, I can't get it. And that's referring to COVID. And that's because they did not see themselves on mainstream media. So we knew that it was really important to keep this journey going, assuring that what we call Harlem quote and Harlems of the world are informed, engaged, and call to action. That is our mission, and we know it's a very critical mission, even more so than ever. Today, we have with us one of our iconic journalists, award-winning journalists, and a mentor to me, who I met at ABC many years ago at 2020, and I had the great opportunity to edit a piece with him. And I don't know if he knew if I could edit or not, but he knew what he was doing. So here we are, some years later, and I applaud Eric Tait, and I work with him on something else for PBS with Dr. James Comer, a 13-part series on education. I was able to be at the screening of a wonderful piece he did on the African burial ground. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Eric Tait to you and let him share briefly about how he got into the media and some of the highlights of his media career. Eric, thank you.
Thanks, Terry. And yeah, you did a phenomenal job editing that piece. Memory serves me correctly. It was called The Pied Piper of Learning or something to that.
Ooh. Taking place in
Chicago.
Chicago.
Yes.
Yeah, DeSalle.
Yep.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He taught those kids critical thinking in addition to teaching them horticultural skills.
Okay, I
I
love it.
remember correctly. He,
Yes.
he gave them a well-rounded education and triggered young people to go on into all kinds of careers, from chemistry to even journalism, if memory serves me correctly.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I believe the school still exists. I've seen things on the news
Better high
about it.
schools.
So
Back
story.
then, it was one of the better high schools in the country. It probably still is.
Okay.
I've been removed from, but you're in education, so you'll be able to pin that down.
Okay.
Yeah, I started at ABC back in 1969. I resigned my regular commission in the United States Air Force because the country was falling apart, basically. And I couldn't see a career in the military that may or may not have been productive in helping my downtrodden people in the United States of America, much less folks across the globe, being as productive as I felt it needed to be. And I said, let me go see what I can do in civilian life. And all three networks were trying to get people of color at the time. This is 1969 when I got out. And the urban disturbances, uprisings, what a lot of folks were labeling riots. But as far as I was concerned, it was urban disturbances based on long neglected whatever. As the Kerner Commission said after they did their investigation, long neglected, discriminatory, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they faulted the media as well as.
Okay.
No, they did. They faulted the media as well as government.
Wow.
And so, but the media realized that because when the disturbances were going on, they didn't have people that looked like you and I to go in there and cover them. Few. So they were actually in a hunt to get people. So all three of them that I interviewed with, CBS, NBC, and ABC, said, yeah, well, we think we could find a place for you in our company.
Okay, so you were in the right place at the right time, ahead of the curve.
Actually, I don't know if I was ahead of the curve because
Yeah.
they were desperate for people from the time those urban disturbances broke out.
Okay.
but, but
Interesting. I don't know if
I may
I
have
won't.
gotten on the back end of the curve in
So
1969.
urban disturbances is what did it. Okay.
That's exactly right. And so I ended up taking ABC's offer. And when I got there, Mal Good, who was ABC's first Black correspondent, first Black man hired by any network in this country to go on television before the American public, was at ABC. He'd been there since 1964. And they actually offered him that job when he was 57 years old. Okay.
Hey, all right. Okay.
But he knew that this was
Work
an
is not done.
opportunity that should not be passed on, so he accepted. And he was a veteran reporter who worked in the Midwest, Pittsburgh Courier, whatever the
Okay.
radio outlet
Okay.
was. He was a veteran reporter. But he sat me down and told me, these folks do not want you here. I don't mean the people who hired you, but the folks you're going to be working with for most part. And
Mhm.
so they're going to try their best to get you out, and just make sure you don't leave until you're ready to leave, until you're good and ready.
Okay.
But
Good advice. Good
I took it
advice.
nice start.
Probably very pertinent to today.
And based on what he told me, and based on what I ran into, he was exactly correct. So I did the exact same thing for any other Black person that came in behind me. When they got there, if I saw them, I would tell them, I'll tell you what Malgood told me, and keep your head on a swivel, period. But I started that exposure on their network assignment desk, and they moved me to a bunch of different locations. It was supposed to be between 8 months and a year. But after, I think it was 5 or 6 months, they said, starting 1st of October, I think by March, they were offering me a job on the network assignment desk.
Okay.
And I accepted because rather than be a trainee, I might as well be an employee. And so I started my journalism career at the ABC network television news assignment desk as a general assignment editor. And the highlights of being there is I went from being a general assignment editor to being their foreign assignment editor, which I had to fight to get, even though I was their senior editor at the time. I'd been there, I think, 4.5 years when the slot opened up, and they were going to try to put somebody else in there. And I said, I don't think so. So I talked to the vice president of news, who had been one of my correspondents that I'd been moving around as an assignment editor. And he, with as surprised as I was that they were going to try to do that, and he said, don't worry about it, I'll take care of it. He took care of it. I became their foreign assignment editor. And anecdotally, I'll tell you that at that time, it turned out that 3 people of color were running the international news desk for all 3 networks. And I think I had the record of being the first of those 3.
Okay.
Put
Clap it up. Clap it up. I love it. I love
it. It may have been simultaneous. It may have been, one of them may have been ahead of me, but I don't think so. I think I was the first Black person to run an international news desk at a major US television network. I took a leave about 5 months after they gave me the slot. I went to Stanford on a fellowship just so I could get more broadened perspective on how news should be covered, etc. Just become a more broader individual, period.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Knowledge is power.
Yeah, and they were supposed to give me my foreign desk back, but of course, when I got back, they didn't want it.
Okay.
But didn't matter. I eventually ended up running their political assignment desk because it was, I believe, the 72 campaign coming up when I got back. And so I ran that for them quite successfully. We transferred from film to tape during that campaign. And so that was a logistical nightmare, juggling film crews, tape crews,
right, absolutely,
editing machines,
absolutely.
let me tell you, and covering a political campaign across the country.
Wow.
That's a feat. Now that I look back on it, that was an amazing feat.
Yeah, it's very
It's
interesting.
swept under the rug. You don't even think about what it is you're doing when you're doing it.
Yeah, interesting. There's a big life journey. I'm Terry Wisdom. This is Harlem Network News. And probably not in the political campaign, but a little bit after. I too had that experience being a film editor and then making the transition to tape.
Hmm.
That was huge. A little bit after you. I wasn't in the political campaign,
Yeah.
but yeah,
I was
I
jumping
remember
all
that.
those crews, film
Yeah,
crews,
remember that.
tape editors, tape editing machines, the whole bit.
Yeah, and it had a lot of people. Actually, I was at NBC at the time, and I was a permanent employee at NBC as a film editor, but I had the insight to just say, let me look and get another job. And I went to a children's show with my mentor, Madeline Anderson, the first Black woman in the Film Editors Union, who signed my application. But I knew, because I didn't have seniority, once they crossed over to tape, they were letting people go. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I did end up to come back to NBC sometime later, but this is history in terms of the
Yeah.
transition
No,
that
you
happened
need to
in media, for sure.
you need to look ahead, think ahead. Yep,
Absolutely.
you're right. That's
Absolutely.
basically and when I got stuck in that assignment desk and I kept getting passed over, I just said, look, I'm tired of being passed over. Just find me a real job, uh, or else we'll be in a court of law. so,
Okay.
so
I love it. Listen, everybody that is listening, okay, this is a class. This is Eric V. Tate, who is confident, knows what he's doing, and stands up for himself. And that's how you move through these worlds.
that's how we all had to move through back in those days. You don't get anywhere because nobody's going to give it to you. And so,
True.
fortunately for me, the guy that I went to was a guy who would work with me when I was in that training program. He liked some scripts that I had written so much. His name was Bob Weston. He's a legend in television news. You know that
Okay.
name, Terry.
Yes. Yes.
He's one of
Yes.
Morrow's boys. He ended
Mhm.
up being the executive producer for ABC News just before I came in there in that training program.
Okay.
And he liked the scripts, and he sent me with Peter Jennings to do a series on man and his environment. Okay.
Wow.
And
Okay.
so ABC did the first environmental series of any network television at the height of, this was before even Earth Day was founded.
Okay.
Because I was reading all this stuff about all the craziness, and I just wrote these scripts, and he went, he's not bad. Here, you go with Jennings, go through the Southeast and do a series of stuff with him. And we did. So he knew me from those days.
Okay.
I was working on the assignment desk. He also knew that I ran that foreign assignment desk for him.
Hmm.
So when I finally said, I will, sue you, he told the powers that be, don't let this guy take you to court. He knows where all the skeletons are buried. you don't, you don't want that.
Hmm.
And so they spent 3 months trying to supposedly check who I was, how good I was, what they could find for me, and they couldn't find anything.
Mm.
So after 3 months, I went to Weston and said, hey, look, I'm tired of this. I'm looking for you.
Hmm.
I'm going to pull the trigger and do what I need to do. He said, no, 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 wait a minute. Let me see.
Okay.
This is crazy. So he told them, hey, do something. So they told him, well, you like him so much, you take it. Funny,
Okay.
funny line, but true. And by then he was the executive producer of 2020. And so he said, oh, okay,
Just come
thanks.
on over here with me.
so, so
Okay.
he took me in as a 2020 producer
Okay.
because
Okay.
I'd already produced pieces for him off the news desk. So he
Okay.
wasn't afraid of my ability to produce stuff.
Okay.
I laugh because he threw the gauntlet down at them, says he's going to take you to court. They said, well, you like him so much, you take him. And he just answered right back, okay, thanks.
Okay. I love it. These are great stories. These are real stories. I'm Terry Wisdom. This is Harlem Network News. And I'm here with one of our powerful, iconic Black journalists, Eric Tait. I'm waiting for the book or the movie to come out, Eric,
I,
about your life. That's for sure.
I'm doing
And
notes now.
excuse me.
I'm doing notes now. I think I'm going to
Okay.
make it up.
Okay. Yeah, very, very important. Would you share? I know that at some point you were president of NABJ. Is that
NYABJ,
and
New York
NYABJ? Okay.
Association of Black Journalists.
Okay. 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 Um,
The while I, was working at ABC, we could see that all the people of color were having a hard time. One, not easy getting in. Two, very hard getting promoted once you're in. And three, nobody advocating for you. So I realized that there was a national organization called the National Association of Black Journalists.
mhm,
Then I discovered that there was a New York chapter.
mhm.
And so I joined the New York chapter to advocate for what was going on for Black journalists. The New
Mhm.
York Association of Black Journalists was designed to give us a body, a group, a force, an organization that could advocate for Black journalists who had to go up against these networks and local stations to
Mhm.
get what was their just due.
Mhm.
And also advocate for making sure their communities were being covered properly. And so over the years, being a member and being an active member, uh, one of the previous presidents had to resign because of personal reasons, and they
Okay.
drafted me to take
Okay.
a
You were
place.
drafted. Okay.
And I said, I got a lot on my plate, but I ended up accepting, and
Thank you for that. Thank you
so
for that.
yeah, so I've been former president. I've been, that's how Media Watch came into being, which is the public affairs show that takes a look at how media covers people of color, communities of color, and issues impacting people of color across the globe,
Right.
not just locally.
Right.
But I was head of their Media Watch committee in the New York Association of Black Journalists. And
Okay. Okay. So
formed that
that's
committee. And then I said, we need a platform. And so I took it to Manhattan Neighborhood Network, and it became a mainstay of part of the New York Association of Black Journalists. When subsequent years later,
mhm.
president wasn't too happy and didn't want to do whatever with us, I said, never mind, it's okay. I'll just, since I launched it, I'll just keep it. And I can always deal with the media situation, whether I'm part of the New York Association of Black Journalists or not. And so
I hear you.
that's what
I
we've been
hear you.
doing ever
That's
since we launched it in the late 90s.
wow. Late 90s, Media
Mm.
Watch. Once again, cutting edge, Eric V. Tait Jr., ahead of the curve with media. And it's so interesting because, I mean, the NABJ was making national history having Donald Trump on. You know,
I, I differentiate between NYABJ and NABJ.
okay, gotcha, gotcha.
NABJ, for me, I mean, I
Mhm.
actually had to resign from NABJ when they couldn't find their way about Mumia Abu Jamal when they were having their convention
Okay,
in
I got
Philadelphia.
you. I
They
got
they just wouldn't step up to the plate properly about that situation. And
you.
so
Mhm. One of our political prisoners.
yeah.
Woo.
So what happened was the New York chapter actually had to do during that convention in Philadelphia their own separate press conference to deal with why there was a rift at
Mm,
that convention, and they
okay.
laid it out there. And so we, New York actually made the national chapter look a little bit better by doing what they did about the lack of calling attention to the inequities of the situation, because the man didn't get a fair trial. They suborned all kinds of different. We won't go into it. Long story
Right.
short,
Yeah, there are many
that's
stories
another,
in this
yeah.
vacant
So,
city.
but they needed to stand up, and they didn't, and the New York chapter did, and so yeah. Uh,
Okay.
but
So
yeah, that to go to what you're saying about NABJ and Donald Trump. having the political candidates at their forum is normal and standard. Most of the time, most folks accept.
Mhm.
Other times they don't. And people were upset that Trump was going to get a platform and Kamala Harris was not, but that was on her scheduling, not on theirs.
Right.
My only caveat with them was the three journalists they picked, even though they were competent, should have been three other journalists. And those are the three female journalists that Trump insulted at his press conference. Yamiche
Okay.
Sundor, the young lady from CNN,
Mhm.
Abby Phillip, I think her name is.
Right. Yes.
There
Yes.
was a third female
Mhm.
that he basically insulted and strong armed or whatever. Said those are the three people that should have been on the panel grilling him at that NABJ forum. The others
I
did a
got
great
you.
job. I'm not knocking it, but once you invite him, you need to put him on the spot with the black journalist that he had insulted. And so they failed their duty and their constituents in not doing that. But that's me as a veteran journalist and
Right.
my caveat. But go ahead.
Okay.
Get
Well,
on that.
listen, it's good to share these things. It's good to have the conversation. In a segue, this is Harlem Network News. I'm Terry Wisdom. I'm here with veteran journalist, award-winning journalist, Eric Tait. You kind of segued and said a little bit about Media Watch, how long it's been going. I'd like to know the mission of Media Watch, which you touched on, and how people can find it, and some of the highlights that you've been covering recently with everything we have going on in this big national, international, and local political world.
I don't know whether they're highlights or not, but we just dig
Okay.
into whatever's happening as best we.
Okay.
We don't try to do day to day, blow by blow. We will when we think there are stories that are being ignored by mainstream media. We'll say, folks, you need to know about X, Y, and Z. But we
Mhm.
try to do in depth analysis and put stories in perspective. Folks, you can find us at Media Watch EVT on YouTube. Media Watch, all caps. No, doesn't matter. Media Watch, but
Yeah, they'll get it.
EVT all caps. And that's the YouTube channel. And we're on Manhattan Neighborhood Network every other Monday, and that's MNN1 in the New York metro area. It's on, I know their 1995 HD channel.
Mhm.
I think if you're on Spectrum, it's 34.
Okay.
I forget what it is on RCN.
Okay.
But
Okay.
when we
But
put it
people
out,
can
we push it
find
out so
you.
folks can find it.
They can get lots of information.
No,
What is
the mission really is, as I said, we take a look at how media covers people of color, issues that impact people of color. And that's not just in New York, that's locally, nationally, and internationally. Because, and we don't always stay ahead of the curve, but there are times when we will try to call attention. Look, Gaza, Hamas, Israel, West Bank, all that Mideast stuff keeps gobbling up all the ether, all
the air in the room?
that's exactly right. Okay.
Sucking the air out.
And I'm not saying doesn't deserve, because there's some horrendous stuff going on. And
Mhm.
close to the anniversary of what kicked it off, and don't want to get into all that. That's another whole show unto itself.
Yes,
But
it is. Absolutely.
there are, like, nobody's taking a hard look at Haiti, about what's going on in Haiti. Haiti is basically a failed state. And it's a failed state just because of imperialistic interference in Haiti's government for centuries, from the time they overthrew the French and had to spend centuries paying off a debt to the French, who they kicked out so they could become free people. And the Europeans and the Americans actually let the French impose that debt that the Haitian people had to be paying for centuries, just because they won their freedom. And that's what Haiti had to pay to join the community of nations as a free nation. Pay France.
Outrageous.
People
Outrageous.
don't understand that. And then they ask, why is Haiti one of the poorest countries in the Western Hemisphere? Because they've been giving their money to France, and people have been imperialistically exploiting them for
The truth to
from the
power.
time, from the time. Okay, that's another whole polemic. But but the Sudan, all kinds of craziness. That's probably the worst famine and the worst refugee crisis going on right now. But we're not hearing much about that. And guess what? We haven't been doing much on it. But the reason why is because we don't have the resources to put people in the field. We have to rely on newswire services, mainstream media that have the stuff to go cover these areas. And if
Yes.
you don't take a look at BBC, if you don't look at Reuters, and you don't look at Agence France Presse and
Al
some other
Jazeera.
international media, you're
Mhm.
not going to find out what's going on in those parts of the globe. And so we try to bring that to our viewers' attention. And yeah, we'll pick stories that people may overlook, but it's all
Very,
about
very
dealing with
important, very
people.
significant. And once again, a hand raise for Black media or covering stories that pertain to Black people, people of color. There needs to be an infusement of funds and investment in Black media because there's less now than there was in prior years, and it makes a difference.
Look, the journalistic model across the globe seems to be broken, period. Okay.
Mhm.
Newspapers, day-to-day newspapers, not doing very well. I mean, newspapers are closing up left and right.
Mhm.
There are all kinds of citizen journalists that aren't really journalists, but they're flooding the internet with all kinds of stuff. And so you don't know what's good, what's bad, where it's coming from, or any of that, and serious bunch of misinformation all over.
Yes.
So if individuals don't get together, like you're doing what you're trying to do,
Mhm.
a lot of nonprofit entities are trying to actually come together to do non-advertising supported journalism so that local people can actually get news about their community and not
Mhm.
rely on the internet and uh, corporate sponsored media like Sinclair that will push propaganda across local television stations left and right to the point where they put out a script and then they tell all their stations, you run with this script. And it tends to be mostly right wing MAGA stuff. But people living in those areas got no choice. That's their local TV station. That's what they're going to be stuck with.
Mhm.
Well, look, all I can say to people is you have to broaden wherever you try to get your news. You can't just rely on the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, um, any of the mainstream media. You have to look for other places. You mentioned Al Jazeera. If you can find a platform that will put Al Jazeera up, um, BBC isn't bad, but you know, it's
It's
still
seen as
majority white folk,
right.
but they at least do more international news
Mhm.
with less bias. And they do have a few people of color in their anchor chairs. I don't know what their reporting stuff looks like. I don't know what their stringer staff looks like, you
Right.
know.
I got you.
But,
I got you.
but yeah, we've got a problem globally because there's more disinformation than real news flooding the internet.
Right. Yeah, no, it's very, very critical. And media, I mean, and this time has proved it. Like once it's said and it's said three times, it's very difficult to roll it back. And because people see it on the air, they tend to believe it, and it's misinformation, and that funnels right down to the young people. You know, this is a very, with all of the access that we have to information, it still tends to be very uninformed young people.
Well, we
There's
don't teach,
access.
they don't teach civics in school
Right.
anymore.
Absolutely.
They
Yeah.
teach very little history. And so if you don't have a dedicated teacher that actually teaches what civics is all about and what history is all about, these kids are not going to have the perspective or have the nudging
Of a parent.
guidance to go look for good information. If you have no model on where and how to find good information, then you're really operating in a vacuum. And so these kids are all over TikTok, they're all over all their devices that are all over the web, and there's no governance and there's no guidelines. So
Yeah,
not
it's
US
it's
society,
very,
global society is suffering from all this. You know, it's a totally different world.
yeah,
So I thank
absolutely,
you
it's
for
very.
what you're doing. We need more outlets. Uh, Hopefully, people are doing local neighborhood newspapers. I see a whole bunch of stuff in the New York area where you have community newspapers that hopefully have people that are covering their local community better than the mainstream media. What have you seen as you going across the city doing your stuff in these?
I mean, I've seen things change. Maybe during COVID, there's like a Harlem patch, and patch is like all across the country. But since COVID has wound down a bit, um, interestingly, now Harlem Patch has become more of a tabloid where they're just throwing out, lots of negative things in the Black community. So, we've got to really watch what's happening.
Yeah,
And I think somehow we've got to really do an invasion of TikTok with some real information. But as one young person said to me, she said, I don't watch the news because I don't find it pleasurable and it's boring.
I understand.
So
Look, some people don't. They don't. Look,
yeah,
I
but
come
that's
from
kind
the
of
military.
across the board. So the key is, and it to me is very critical to be able to reach the young people and get the clear information out because of
I
course
would
TikTok.
ban TikTok. I would ban
I
TikTok.
hear you.
Tell
I
you
hear
what,
you. I hear you. I
Chinese
hear you.
don't have TikTok the way the rest of the world had TikTok.
I
China
hear
put all kinds of restrictions on TikTok on what it can put up on that platform in China because they don't want their kids and their young people being poisoned by a bunch of trash.
you.
The second reason I would ban TikTok, not because of the bad, is because basically that's the Chinese government collecting all kinds of data, people across the globe. The fact that this country is stupid enough to let another country that could be a serious adversary to their well-being function unchecked, and the rest of these crazy people here, because they are making money on that platform, don't want it banned, is basically national suicide. Now,
You heard
people
it here
say
on Harlem
I'm
Network
crazy
News.
and I'm stupid and I'm reactionary, but trust me, that's the Chinese government controlling your information, scooping it up to better be able to deal with your country as an adversary. And you are willy nilly giving them that information because it's fun and you're making money from it. Well, yeah, okay. Go down to twos because you're enjoying yourself making money. Trust me, when the federal government and the military say ban that, that's a national security. They're not joking. They're not saying this because they're worried about some corporate dollars. They're actually trying to do their job about protecting this country. The fact that TikTok is pleasurable, addictive, heroin is pleasurable, addictive.
Right.
Not going to
Okay.
ban heroin?
Okay. I hear you.
You understand where I'm coming from? You're
I
not going
got
to
you.
ban heroin? Yeah,
I got
crazy, crazy.
you.
People
Okay.
think I'm a right-wing reactionary when I say, no, I think the right-wing people love TikTok because they can put out all kinds of misinformation on it. They're not trying to ban TikTok. I think they're fighting to keep TikTok viable.
Okay. Okay. So we've got a lot of work to do. We have maybe about 10 more minutes,
Okay.
but I wanted just to get your thoughts and opinions on what is happening locally. I mean, there's many elephants in the room. The Mayor Adams situation is definitely one of the elephants in the room.
All right, let's
Love,
talk about that.
excuse me.
Let's talk about that.
Okay.
We only have
Okay.
10 minutes left. Let's talk about that.
Okay. Okay. So what are your thoughts? I mean, it's, I guess our third black mayor, second black mayor, after Dinkins, and all top tier, basically people of color. Um, I We are just trying to understand what is happening, why it's happening, and try to get some clarity
There you
here
go.
on a platform like Harlem Network News,
All right.
coming from a media watch. So
let's,
love
let's
to hear your
talk
thoughts
that.
there.
And I'm going to try to be as succinct as possible because
Thank you.
we only have 10 minutes, and this is a crucial topic.
Okay.
Two things I always say. If you're crooked and you're doing nefarious things, I don't care who you are or what color you are. If you're crooked and you're doing nefarious things, I don't care who you are or what color you are. You broke the law, you did whatever's wrong, then you need to pay for it. But allegations and charges are one thing, proof is another. Now, what I'm saying is the optics are bad because of the administration and the fact that he put friends, friends of friends, and those friends put their relatives and whatever in his inner circle. Now, he may have put friends in because he trusted them and he expected them to obey the law, and some of them may or may not have. And I understand why you circle yourself with people you can trust, because when you're a black person in any of these white spaces, they're coming at you left and right with daggers. And so you need somebody to watch your back. I was lucky when I was at 2020, I had Ray Peterson and I had Jackie Farmer to watch my back. Those
Okay.
were my people watching my back. So I know the psychology, and trust me, black mayors who get elected are always targets. But I say follow the money, okay? And I mean follow the money on both ends of this case. If you can prove in a court of law that he did election shenanigans with straw donors, et cetera, and you can prove it beyond a shadow of a doubt in a court of law that somebody else did it behind his back, he didn't know, and you can get him down on the fact that he knew, he needs to go down. Okay? If you can't prove it, then he doesn't need to go down.
Okay.
The other part of following the money is, and I'm thanking my daughter, who I said is really sharp, told
Of
me
course.
told me back when I was watching the first Obama election, don't worry about it, they got the numbers, he wins. The re-election, which I thought was really going to be iffy, again, this same daughter said to me, don't worry about it, they got the numbers, he wins.
Okay.
Both
Okay.
times.
I
So
hear you.
I happened to see her this morning and I said, I know instances of mayors being targeted just because they're black. They did the same thing to Ernie Davis in Mount Vernon. And Ernie Davis was a black mayor in Mount Vernon. And they kept sicking the federal government on him. They'd be walking out of his office with boxes. The press would be taking pictures. Did it for years. Found nothing.
I hear you.
Ernie Davis said, look, you can look all you want. I haven't done anything. You can go back beyond the statutes of limitations, and wrong thing to say. They went back beyond the statute of limitations, found a tax return that he improperly filed. They called it chicanery. They caught him, slapped him on the wrist for a improperly filed tax. Didn't find any corruption, didn't find any other stuff they were trying. Okay. I watched that. I talked about it before on Media Watch. So that's why I'm saying.
Gotcha.
Kathy Hochul does not need to be removing. She needs to let the Justice Department investigate this fully and do what they do. Now, she's right. He needs to be able to run the city properly while this is going on. Otherwise, he leaves himself open to the city's falling apart. You got to go. He cannot let that happen while he's fighting this battle. Now, the reason I say follow the money is this daughter of mine said to me at one of the meetings she was at, a good friend of hers who was part of the Black Mayor's Caucus said they had a briefing and he told them, Eric Adams says, they're coming to get me. This is months back. They're coming to get me. And the reason why is because, And I want some Black investigative journalists working in this city to dig into this, follow the money. The no bid contracts, everything in New York are contracts, whether it's real estate, whether it's healthcare, whether it's whatever. There's a long,
Whether it's education,
whatever it is,
vendors,
long history of all these sweetheart no bid contracts being funneled out the door by friends and connections and all that. And he walked in as mayor and saw that happening and saw it all going and said, we're going to put a stop to that. And the nature of the beast was he broke down the process into a different form of bidding so that
broke the
people of
process.
color would be able to get access to those contracts. When I say follow the money, I mean follow the money. Now, once he started doing that, that's when he said, they're coming to get me. Now, I hadn't heard this before this morning because the optics of all these friends and friends of all that being in positions of power looks so bad, okay? And now when you talk about upgrades on airlines, well, yeah, okay, so people get upgrades on airlines all the time, but that's a bribe because maybe his inspector greased somebody's inspection from the Turkish embassy or whatever. You see what I'm saying? Okay. Maybe he didn't know anything about the inspector greasing the whatever. And as in, you know what you do when you get elected and people want to give you things and you're not sure, you just say, oh, okay, you want to upgrade me? Fine. I'm not saying this is a smart thing to do, as is proven to be the case. It's the dumb thing to do. You have to be above board and above suspicion. So now when you're messing with their money and you're over here not looking good, you know they're coming for you, but you're looking bad. This is something that's playing out as we speak. And I'm saying follow the money on both sides. If there's election shenanigans and he didn't do right legally and he tried to con the system, he's got to go. If there is a whole series of no bid contracts that he made sure got to the right people, got other people involved with, who is going to fault him for changing the system? So now they need to prove in a court of law that this man is corrupt, crooked, and did what they're alleging he has done. That's my take on the situation. Now, because money runs New York, who are the people stand to benefit if he goes down the tubes? All the people with the former no bid contracts, all the other people who want to be in the office, all the real estate things that maybe he wasn't catering to.
Okay.
What we need to look at. I'm not saying he's innocent, but they need to prove.
But we've got to look at it and
we need to dig into this carefully.
Yes, and it's
follow the money.
Right. And this is Harlem Network News, and we're winding down. I'm here with Eric Tait of Media Watch, EVT Productions. These are some critical times, and thank you, Eric, for giving a different slant and insight into what is going on with Mayor Adams. But one of the real issues and concerns is, once again, the media coverage. You know, people are being like tried in the media. There are people just giving random speculations. And then because you've got a lot of people in the administration jumping ship or being taken out or being changed, or, you know, pressure coming from wherever, you know, there's, you know, something being said, well, you know, Kathy Hochul is pressured in the chancellor situation. So these things are very, very, very concerning. There was also some speculation that, and I think Mayor Adams may have said it herself, that his stance in terms of going to the different countries, I think he went for 4 days to different countries, Mexico, Colombia, maybe Ecuador, you know, just saying whatever the promotion is about coming to New York City, like, we can't handle you anymore. You might want to try to go somewhere else. He did that on his own. So there was some speculation that that caused some rifts, you know, like with the Biden administration, you know, maybe he overstepped. there are people who are thinking that it's coming from that place. So I don't know what your thoughts are.
I
Oh.
New York City mayors all have international reach. I mean, De Blasio went to Israel.
Mhm.
The billionaire guy, what's his name?
Bloomberg.
Bloomberg went
Mhm.
all over the globe. Okay. And they went all over the globe in the interests of New York City. And
Okay.
Eric Adams is no different. The fact that these migrants were being bused from Texas into New York put a burden on the city, and he understood that. So he went to the heart of the matter. Uh, I don't think, I could be wrong. There may be some internal stuff where there might have been collusion with somebody in the Biden administration, with somebody in the New York area who figured out maybe we can get them on our side because we want to torpedo this guy anyway. You never know because you don't know who's connected to whom. But
Right. Yeah.
because the Biden administration were pushing to get to the root causes of the immigration crisis, which is
Mhm.
what they actually tasked Kamala Harris to do, and
Yes.
did the exact same thing, visited those Central American countries and talked to them. I don't see that as conflicting. They're both going to the root areas to say,
Okay.
let's slow these immigrants down.
Mhm.
These don't come. For me, that's the message the Biden administration is actually trying to push because
Okay.
they got a border crisis. They need to slow it down. So the fact that he's trying to do that signals to me that he's actually on the same page with them, even though somebody there might say he's usurping us, but it's the same mission.
Right.
So I would think that's not a conflict. But that doesn't mean somebody in that administration is
Mhm.
in cahoots with somebody in New
Right.
York
Because
that wants to
initially he
torpedo.
was
Yeah, I
part of
can't
the
speak to that. Yeah.
initially he was part of the campaign team for Biden, and then he wasn't. And some folks feel like he was a bit snubbed at the DNC.
Oh
So,
no. Actually, he was, but that's because that rift broke earlier when he had a rift with them about not doing enough to help New York City on their
okay,
migrant crisis. I
okay,
think he called them out and say, "Hey, look, I got a problem here. You guys aren't helping me." Memory serves me correct. He
okay,
actually publicly said something like that, which I think triggered the rift. You
okay,
better go back and cross-check what my memory is telling me. But I think I remember him saying, "Look, guys, I got a problem here. You're not doing enough to help me with my problem." And I think they said, "What are you talking about? We are blah, 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 blah." I think that's where that riff came from.
okay. Yeah, because I mean, not ironically, but a lot of the migrant crisis are in a lot of the Black Belt cities, for sure. So I mean, these are things that we really have to look at.
Before Texas was busing migrants to northern cities, migrants would hit the border, they'd head for Chicago. They'd hit the border, they'd head for Nevada. Head for where there are strong communities and I'm talking about the Latin American migrants.
Yes,
The other
yes,
ones who come from other places crossing southern border,
mhm,
they just try to get asylum anywhere they can. But
yes,
those Latin American folks, they actually have relatives and people
right. And
in
they're going
various
where they
cities.
know.
That's
Going,
where they go. They
going.
now this was before the Texas busing
Mhm,
actually dumped boat busloads on New York, but
mhm,
people were seeking to go where their people were.
mhm. Okay. Well, thank you for that, Eric. And I'm that you shed a lot of light on the Merrill situation. I'm really hoping that we can get through this, keep the city running. Don't know what the lens is going to look like for reelection with all of this that is going on, but I think we have to stand firm
Here's,
and, as media, not let the other mainstream media drive the train.
so we
We've got
need
to
to,
speak.
I agree with you. We need to actually call out folks who want to rush to judgment. Okay.
Okay.
The last poll I saw said something like 60 something percent of New Yorkers want him to resign. And I'm not in the 67%. My last media watch, I was saying Eric Adams for me is a 50-50 mayor right now.
Hmm.
Stuff that he's done, 50% of it, I think, helps my people and the city, and the other 50%, I'm not sure where that fits. And I don't like 50-50 mayors, right? However, I said that before I got the information about him being targeted, because some of the things he was doing may have gotten the wrong spin, because people are already targeting what he was doing behind the scenes about equalizing the playing field when it comes to the largesse that's being doled out in this city. And once you start messing with people's money, they start coming after you. But my take on all this is, as I said before, follow the money, follow the evidence. If he broke the law, if he did what they're claiming and alleging, he's got to go. Follow the money, follow the evidence. If you cannot prove beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law he did what you're alleging, then you need to acquit him and let him go on about his business. But you cannot prejudge it, and you need to let it run its course. He's innocent till proven guilty like anybody else. And if you can give Donald Trump that many crazy whatever bites of the apple, because now we got an appellate panel trying to say that Attorney General Letitia James may have overstepped her mandate when she took him to task for defrauding these banks and beat him in a court of law legitimately. Now they're talking about trying to upend her legitimate conviction of him. This is what I've just read recently, okay? So now if they don't give him that many bites of the apple, Eric Adams at least deserves his day in court. And if he's guilty, you throw the book at him. And if he's innocent, you need to let him walk. The problem for him now is, because of the optics, all these friends, all these relatives, all these cronies in his inner circle, even if he's innocent, his reelection chances, in my estimation, knowing politics, is down the tubes.
Okay.
Because he needs a coalition to be reelected. The coalition, Black people are not the largest component of that coalition. That
and
coalition
don't have as much power and don't have as much money.
There you go.
That's real talk. And, you know, when we talk about optics and we talk about friends and we talk about family, there couldn't have been more optics than in the Donald Trump administration. I mean, that was beyond optics. Sons, son-in-laws,
unfortunately, Eric Adams looks just as bad.
Yeah, so
he looks just as bad. And you can't be that way when you're a Black person in these offices,
right?
Because you know they're coming. Look, I can name you Black mayors from Detroit, Chicago, Mount Vernon, New York. Listen, David Dinkins should have been reelected. Point of the matter is, Rudy Giuliani took credit for all the stuff that David Dinkins did. And I can speak from, I did David Dinkins' reelection video.
I got you.
It came to me at the last minute.
I got you.
You know, point of the matter is, coalitions that Black people need, they might work once. When it comes to election time, all of a sudden, the coalition can't seem to coalesce again. Okay? So
you heard it here. Well, last point, and this is Harlem Network News. I'm Terry Wisdom. I'm here with, you know, master, iconic journalist Eric Tait from Media Watch, and he's got a real good perspective, and you know, his own perspective, you know, from research in terms of what's happening. Do you think that the situation here with Mayor Adams is going to impact folks coming out to vote? Because we know in some of our inner city communities, people are disillusioned, don't really trust politics, don't feel they're getting anything, and there's apathy in a sense because of that. Do you think this is impactful now that the media spin is happening on air? Let
me flip it and turn it the other way. We cannot afford to make it impact whether we come out to vote. That's how we deal with this situation. When you know they're coming out for you and for your people, maybe they need to be sought after, but maybe they don't. But the bottom line is you need a self-preservation instinct. And your self-preservation instinct, as Black people, we've actually had decent self-preservation instinct for 400 years in this country, which is why you see so many Black elected officials across the country. But because the MAGA people are trying to turn the clock back, and they have a full court press to do that, Black people need to understand that we're in a never-ending struggle. And so the gains that we have made, we cannot take for granted, and we cannot say we are disillusioned. We shouldn't be. Look how many Black people have been elected across the country, including right here in New York State. If you run a litany of who's where in the state legislature, mayor of the city, you name it, we have made significant strides. That's not to say that this country treats us as equal citizens. We're still in that never-ending struggle. But the only way we win it is if we continue to fight, which means you folks who haven't registered, get your rear ends out there and register. You folks who don't plan to vote, get your rear ends out there and make sure the MAGA people don't turn the clock back. You may not like Kamala Harris because she's a Black female, and you as a Black male don't like Black women in charge, or you as a Black female are envious of another Black woman that might be the most powerful person in the world. But that powerful person in the world is your best chance at self-preservation and moving ahead, not the orange dodo guy who tried to overthrow the country and doesn't care about any rule of law. Okay?
Thank you for that. And in some of our pre-conversations, and this, I don't even want to start this because we got to go. But with Kamala Harris and some of the like pinpricks, which would be Israel, Gaza, Ukraine, what's the Black agenda? What Black agenda is out there? What is Kamala Harris addressing? With all of those, in some of our pre-conversation, even with the Palestinian situation in Michigan, basically, when you're weighing, and I think you didn't say lesser of the evils, but you said something like choices. We got to look at that because, the memory is short because people are in 2-minute sound bites. But let's remember that, there was a ban on Muslims coming into this country. If you look like you might be Muslim with a beard or anything else, you were getting taken off of airplanes. Let's remember that. So if you could just capitalize that statement, because that was powerful when you said it.
Here's the deal. I saw a poll that said Kamala Harris and Donald Trump in the state of Michigan, where they've got more Muslims, more Arab populations, they were neck and neck. And that to me was incomprehensible because part of the thrust of it was a lot of those people were not going to vote. And if they don't vote, just because they're upset with the way the Biden administration is dealing with the current Middle Eastern crisis, those Muslims, those Palestinians, those Arabs who live in Michigan, who think if they sit on their hands, they're making a statement about a bad policy choice of the current administration, all they're doing is putting a worse person into the office that's going to do an even worse job for them than the current administration. Now, they claim they don't want to vote for the lesser of two evils. And I'm saying you need to vote for self-preservation for not just you, but your people that are suffering in the Mideast. And the guy that's waiting in the wings that you think if you don't vote for her is not going to make it better, he's going to make it worse. That's the self-preservation rubric equation you need to be thinking of. You're not sitting on your hand because you don't like this person and you're sending a message. You're torpedoing your self-preservation and the preservation of your relatives that are in the situation that are in the Mideast. And if you can't see that, then you have a self-destruct mentality, period.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Eric. That's I would say a great closing statement, unless there's something else you'd like to add. We appreciate you. Knowledge is power. I'm fired up to keep getting the work done, to stay in the struggle and know that it's an ongoing battle and fight. We have to keep our confidence. We've got to keep our heads up. We've got to speak truth to power. We've got to investigate. We've got to do all of those things. So just anything that you wanted to share that you haven't shared as a closing statement, please.
Right now, EVT Educational Productions, my nonprofit, is actually running a media training program in the city of Mount Vernon, which is why I know a lot about the city of Mount Vernon, because I raised my kids there, and that's why I know about politics. And it's a productive program. The problem is we can't seem to get and hold a cadre of young people like we did when we were running an all-volunteer, non-funded program back 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Okay.
And so what I would like, if anybody out there is in the Lower Westchester area, they've got young people 16 and up who want to learn media, want to learn good basic journalistic skills, actual production skills.
Okay.
We've got a free media training program that's been funded by Project Rise. They should contact Karen Marks, okay? And Karen Marks is our current administrator of the program, and she should be reached at 917-618-8682. And the email address is M as in Mary, A as in Alpha, A as in Alpha, T as in Tait, dot media as in media, dot film as in film, at gmail.com. And we would be happy to have any of these young people in Lower Westchester come sign up for that program. It's being taught at the First Presbyterian Church in Mount Vernon on Columbus and Lincoln Avenue.
Okay.
So afternoon sessions, 3 to 6. Please, any young people, you know of any, give Karen a call, send them to us so we can continues, because we're helping a interesting small core right now of people who were formerly incarcerated, and they are very enthusiastic and they are learning skills that will be productive and help change their lives around. We want to make sure this program continues, but it's community wide, so spread the word or give us a call.
Thank you for sharing that, and I will get the coordinates of that so we can definitely put it up on all our pages, and Harlem Network News is going to come and check you out. That's great.
We'll come to Triumph for the third day on Thursday down at Foley Square. The marker for the African burial ground, Lorenzo Pace's monumental. We're going to celebrate that triumph of the human spirit down there Thursday, October 10th.
Okay. Very, very, very befitting. So thank you for that. And I think I covered the initial launch of that great piece of art. I remember several of our dignitaries, our late Reverend Calvin Butts was also there. So it was a very, very powerful day. So thank you so much, Eric. This is Harlem Network News, and we're still here and still we rise. You can reach out to us, subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can support us and Zelle us by making donations. Harlem Network News at gmail.com. We have a GoFundMe that's ongoing. And if you have news and information that you would like to share, that would be great. We're doing Cash App also. And as I said, our services are essential. And we're doing a lot of connecting with other Black journalists. So it is an honor and a pleasure to have such a veteran as Eric Tait, who's been doing his Black job, quote, for a long time. So it's a great thing. Want people to remember that the last day to register to vote in New York City is October 26th. So make sure you keep that in mind. Early voting starts on October 28th. And, we're voting up and down the ballot so that we can control the House, control whatever we can in the Senate. Very, very, very critical. And there are some items on the ballot, and I'm not going to go into that, but we will on a whole nother show because I believe there's 5 items for New York City and an item that's statewide. And you got to make decisions for which way to go on that because that has to do with your life as well. So let's get out in these streets. Let's get outside, as the young people say, because it's a hand-to-hand combat to get out the news and information. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Harlem Network News. And thank you, Eric, and
Thank you,
Media
Terry. Keep
Watch.
doing
And
what you're
I'm
doing.
loving to hear that you've got those educational programs going. That's truly important and a complete blessing. You're doing the work. Thank you. Okay.
Thanks, Terry.
Media
You
Watch,
keep
Eric.
doing what you're doing.
Yes, sir. I have my marching orders. I got it. Thank you. Have a great day.
Too.